Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, we're talking football. The Rams are in the Super Bowl. What does that mean for Dodger fans? And do Dodger fans get to root for the 49ers? That and a bunch more coming up, so keep it locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. Despite what it says under us, I'm Vince Samperio, Trezorine Fiends. That's Jeff Snider of Baseball Essential. And there we go. Now we're in the right place for those of you watching. We are here together for the first time in a while, and unfortunately no baseball news, but we do have some Los Angeles / decisions and thoughts about the Dodger fans and fandom. So we're gonna get into all that. But yeah, Jeff, how you been? How's it going? It's been a little minute.
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a long time since you and I've talked together. Probably not as long as it feels, but yeah, I'm excited to talk football with you apparently because I'm a huge football fan. So
yeah, you always struck me as the big NFL guy. But yeah, so the Rams are going to the Super Bowl. None of us are Rams fans, so there's not too much. Well, I don't know if you're excited. I'm not really excited as a Rams. I'm rooting for the Bengals, but we'll get into that kind of stuff. But first, real quick, want to thank you and remind you to make Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All right, Jeff. So this one's kind of been a big debate I've seen on social media, Twitter, Instagram, even some in-person debate. And it has more to do with the San Francisco 49ers and Dodger fans that are also 49er fans. And I don't know, a lot of kind of condescending tones of how could you be a Dodger fan and root for a San Francisco team? I know I have my thoughts. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I think I know what you're going to say, but, it might surprise me.
yeah, I feel like a lot of this seemed to me, and I could be wrong because, as you know, I don't follow football a lot, but it seemed like a straw man argument a little bit because it seemed like people were saying everyone who is a 49ers fan chants beat LA. And so I saw a lot of people saying you can't be a Dodger fan and then chant beat LA. And I basically agree with that sentiment. I just would assume that most Dodger fans who are also 49er fans don't chant beat LA because, Dodger fans are familiar with that chant. And, at least some of us think it's a sad little brother thing. And so I don't understand that chant anyway. And I have a hard time seeing very many Dodger fans using it. So, but as far as who you're allowed to root for, Los Angeles didn't have an NFL team for what, pushing 30 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so the fact is, if you are, the Rams move out of LA when I was 17 years old, I think, and I'm old. And so if you're your age, you were basically barely out of diapers.
Yeah, the Raiders left when I was like 2 or 3, and then
when the Rams and Raiders left town, and so everybody your age who grew up a sports fan in Los Angeles area had to pick an NFL team. And the fact is, the Rams may have been pretty low on the list of teams they might choose because they chose to leave Southern California, or they left. Obviously there's more that goes into those dynamics, but they left. And you chose the Raiders because of, I think, your uncle, right?
Yeah.
But everybody chose a team for a reason. And the 49ers were the closest team, I guess. Yeah, the Chargers, but they weren't really a real team.
Yeah.
LA fans, it was basically the Niners or the Chargers, and so, or the Raiders. But plenty of Southern California football fans probably chose the 49ers for different reasons. Here in Utah, where I live, 49ers are really popular because of Steve Young and the Utah connection. Yeah, so for whatever reason people pick the team, you're not going to change loyalties just because, if Salt Lake City got an MLB team, I wouldn't suddenly become a Salt Lake Mariners fan or A's fan or whoever it is. I'd go to games and I'd enjoy it. But especially if the Giants moved to Salt Lake, I definitely wouldn't become a Giants fan. I'd still be a Dodger fan. And so, football fandom is a weird thing in Southern California. And I think people ought to be able to root for whoever they want. But I do definitely agree that no self-respecting Dodger fan or Laker fan would ever chant beat LA.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, since LA, the Rams and now Chargers hasn't really been a thing that long. It's been like 4 years since they started playing here. So I honestly don't even know if beat LA is a chant that Niner fans even do. Like, I personally haven't heard it or seen videos of it or anything. So I don't know if that's even a chant that they do. Them and the Rams, they were in the same division, but they weren't really rivals up until recently when they did happen to move to LA. But but I agree with that part. If you're a Dodge fan, you're not gonna say beat LA. And honestly, like you said, growing up, you're gonna have to pick a team. The Niners are a pretty popular team overall throughout the country. They're probably one of top 7 teams, like universally in this country, of people that root for, like Packers, Cowboys. I don't know if I throw Raiders in there, but Raiders maybe a little bit. But yeah, I don't have an issue with it. It just it does feel weird when you say like, oh, like you're a Dodger fan, but you're a Niner fan. You and a Giants fan are both happy at the same time. It is funny. But personally, I mean, obviously you're going to there's random fandoms for, there's probably Raider. I mean, there's definitely Raider fans that are Giants fans. It's not that popular. Usually Raiders and A's are together and Giants and Niners are together. So it's not that popular, but I'm sure there's at times when I've been happy at the same time as a Giants fan has been happy. But when it's in that much, like that in bulk, I understand it. For me, Niners their fan base is just annoying. They're a strong fan base when they're good. I don't think they're a strong fan base when they're not good, which is why I personally have an issue with them. Rams fans, on the other hand, I don't know that everyone that I don't like a team, if I don't like it, usually because I don't like their fan base, it has nothing to do with their team. Like, I would like the Rams team if it didn't come with their fan base. And just based on what I've been seeing on Instagram so far today, I'm still right in that regard of them being obnoxious. But yeah, I don't have a personal issue with Dodger fans rooting for the Niners. Every sport's different. Obviously, you're going to, like I said, you're always going to be rooting with someone from a rival from another team at some point. It just happens to be probably a little bit on a bigger scale in this sense.
My disclaimer to all of our listeners, many of whom may be Rams fans, of course, Vince isn't talking about you.
Yeah,
you're not obnoxious. You're awesome. You're the exception that proves the rule. I did realize I saw American Underdog this weekend with my family, the movie about Kurt Warner, and I realized that those 2 Super Bowls that the Rams played in back then, I think those were the last time that I actually cared who won the Super Bowl, because I was a big Kurt Warner fan, still am. I always, whatever it was, I guess the same reason that they ended up making a movie about him is why I was drawn to him. And so, and I found myself, I think I'm going to be rooting pretty good for the Rams in this Super Bowl. Joe Burrow's a good story. Their Bengals are a good story. But, I figure since the Rams are the only team I've ever rooted for in the Super Bowl in my lifetime, and they're in LA, which I have some ties to, I might as well root for the Rams in the Super Bowl. So Vince, you and I we are blood enemies in 2 weeks.
That's fine with me. Yeah, it does. People always say like, oh, support LA. You know what? No, I don't. It has to do with what I have to deal with. And if the Rams win, I have to deal with a lot of obnoxious stuff on social media, which I can avoid, but I'm not going to. Whereas if the Bengals win, I only know 2 Bengals fans, and they're both pretty nice guys that wouldn't rub it in my face. Like, they didn't rub it in my face when they beat the Raiders. So I respect them.
As always, the lesson here is don't get too invested in football.
Yeah, that's probably a fair point, and something I should have taken note of back in the day. But here we are, and going to talk a little bit more about the relationship between Matt Stafford and Clayton Kershaw, and an idea I saw on social media if the Rams do happen to win. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Let's talk about Built Bar. If you have listened to this podcast at any point, you know Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar. If you haven't tried it, though, that's where you're missing out, because it really, truly is. I've spent my own hard-earned money on Built Bar. Jeff has spent his own hard-earned money on Built Bar. Yes, they do send us Built Bar sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes we got to foot it out of our own pocket, and we both do it because they do taste great. You do feel better when you eat it because, if you're not going to eat too many calories, I don't count calories, but if I did have to, Built Bar would be perfect because it's low calorie, low sugar, low carbs, high protein, high fiber, everything you could ask for out of a protein bar, everything you could ask for out of a chocolate bar, but it's both. It's a hybrid. It's perfect. Go get you a Built Bar. Right now, if you go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15, you can get 15% off your order. That's built.com, promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. Also, you can, if you're on your, after you do that, go to rockauto.com, because this episode is also brought to you by rockauto.com. And I know it's impossible these days for local chain stores to have all the parts you need for whatever car, whatever model it is, but it's not impossible for rockauto.com, and they make it happen. And they make it happen at less, it's cheaper. Why choose to assume 30, 50, 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership when you can get it from rockauto.com? And you're supporting a family business that's been serving people online for over 20 years. Everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. So if you go to rockauto.com right now, check out all the parts available for your car or truck. And if they say, how did you hear about us, in that little box, let them know Locked On sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right. Want to once again thank you, remind you, and tell people, want to let you know to tell people to make Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. We are on YouTube, where you can watch us, or we are wherever we get podcasts, where you can just hear us. All right, Jeff. So with the Rams making it, Matt Stafford will be the quarterback in the Super Bowl. And as we know, Matt Stafford and Clayton Kershaw grew up playing sports together. They played baseball together. They played football together. And when he first got traded to LA, that was a lot of the fanfare, a lot of the moments, and a lot of the media was, Clayton Kershaw and Matt Stafford, best friends. I want to say I saw Kershaw say something that contradicted that a little bit, but either way, I think the better term is childhood friends. I don't think they're best friends, because we've never seen them together. Not that they both post on social media that much, but never really seen them together outside of when he finally came back to LA, and I think they linked up when they got back to LA. And Stafford's been to a Dodger game, Kershaw went to a Rams game. But yeah, it was just interesting. And I'm sure we're going to see it more here in the next couple of weeks of, Kershaw won the championship in LA in 2020. Now Stafford has a chance to win the championship LA in 2022. But yeah, that's the narrative. And yeah, I forgot what the question was for this, but I'll let you expand on that point.
Yeah, we were just going to talk a little bit about what we think their relationship is, and I think it's helpful in a lot of situations to remember that professional athletes are regular people, and all of us had friends in high school, maybe even who we played sports with. And so I was thinking about, if, my high school quarterback was Gary Samuelson. If Gary Samuelson and I both ended up playing professional sports in Dallas, some town that we didn't have a connection to, and we both ended up playing. I was a pitcher for the Rangers, and he was the quarterback for the Cowboys. I imagine we get these same kind of stories about how they're best friends. And the fact is, Gary and I were friends. We're still friends. We're Facebook friends. Last time I saw him in person, I think, was at our 20-year high school reunion, which has been 7 years ago now, because we're old. I think I've seen his mom more recently. Stopped by and saw her because she's a big Dodger fan. Gary's a Yankee fan, so he's weird, but his mom's a big Dodger fan. So I think my wife and I went and saw her. And so, yeah, it's a friendship. And I don't think anybody who knows me and Gary would describe us as best friends, but we're definitely friends. And if we did both end up playing in the same city, it would be that kind of connection that maybe even makes the friendship a little stronger. Gary and I were also, like Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw, we were also baseball teammates, played on the Lake Elsinore Valley Little League Padres together with Coach Terry Malone, who was not a very good coach, but Gary and I were pretty good friends. Gary's left-handed, and Clayton Kershaw is left-handed, and I'm not a wrong arm. So, there's a lot of similarities. And, that's kind of the parallel I draw is, yeah, it's going to be overblown because, hey, it's a cool thing. And I think Matthew Stafford used Kershaw's name in an audible call a year or two ago. And, that sort of thing can happen. But I imagine that they are friends from high school and from childhood and consider each other friends. And if they weren't both professional athletes, they'd probably be Facebook friends who saw each other at high school reunions once in a while.
Yeah, that's true. It is interesting to note that if the lockout would end, Kershaw would have probably already he wouldn't have to report till that Monday, so he technically could go to the Super Bowl, although most of the Dodger players, as we've seen in the past, show up a day or two before. But I'm not sure if Kershaw has plans of going to the Super Bowl, but we'll see. I don't know, Mookie might be out there if pitchers and catchers aren't reporting that day, so interesting to see that part. Transitioning from that, going to staying with the Rams topic and the LA topic, Sujo, the Dodgers social media, I don't want to get her title wrong, but the social media queen, we'll call her. I don't know if she posted on Twitter or Instagram or both, a thought of she said, can the Rams please win so the Dodgers and Lakers can piggyback on their parade that they didn't get to have? And it's an interesting thought. Obviously, probably wouldn't happen. Obviously, Dodger players can't even, I guess if the coaches didn't go, the players could go, but Lakers are in season, so it wouldn't really be necessarily a true thought, but it would have been interesting, if this had happened last year was still COVID, but I guess the Bucks had a parade, even though it was in the water, a little bit different, but teams did have parades after the Dodgers won, after Lakers won. The two winners after that did have parades, so I guess it could have been a little different, but it would be an interesting thought, if they could do that, hey, invite a couple Dodger players or a couple Laker players and throw them a bone, I guess, since we didn't get to have that parade.
Yeah, and like you said, this would be different if the Dodgers and Lakers were the reigning champions right now. Neither of them is, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Mookie Betts is, if the Rams win the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Mookie Betts is in the parade. And he's been maybe the most visible Dodger fan or Dodger player as a Rams fan. Obviously there's a Clayton Kershaw connection, and honestly, Kershaw and Mookie are maybe the two people who the fans would most want to see in a parade, because Kershaw played forever, finally got that World Series ring, and Mookie came and delivered the ring. And so the fact that the two guys who the fans would most want to see also have ties to the Rams, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But it would definitely be Dodgers making a cameo at a Rams parade, not a Dodgers and Rams parade. But if that's not a reason to root for the Rams, I don't know what is. Vance, put aside your anti-Rams fandom and let's get Mookie and Kershaw on a parade float.
Yeah, that would be cool. That if the Rams win, there would be small benefits like that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that would be something that could happen. It could turn into an LA thing. As we've seen with Rams games this year, the stars come out for the Rams games. Even in last night's game, Leo DiCaprio was there, and Matt Johnson's everywhere in LA, but Matt Johnson was there. A handful of other celebrities I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's become a star-studded event. So I would imagine that they could have an LA icon float or bus or whatever the case is if they did have a parade. I also am interested if they're going to have a parade. Obviously, California has been one of the more strict states. They're still one of the more strict states. Every time I travel out of town and don't have to wear a mask when I'm going into a grocery store or something, it's always a little bit different. But I am interested to see what they would do because theoretically they could have a parade and it wouldn't be the end of the world, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I've been wondering if it looked for a little while like they might end up moving the Super Bowl away from LA because the way the trajectory is going, it seemed like they may be in some sort of large gatherings. Looks like maybe they're going to be safe. Obviously, the Rams have had fans in their stadium. I was thinking, when the Rams were the LA Rams before, but they were actually playing Anaheim, they shared a stadium with the Angels. I was thinking, would Mookie Betts be allowed to go to Rams games if they played in a stadium that was also a major league stadium?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
I
don't
guess
know.
if you bought a ticket, I assume they wouldn't actually prevent major league players from buying a ticket to get into the major league stadiums. And I assume on game day, are there even any? I don't think were the Raiders the last dual use stadium up in
Yeah.
Oakland? So
Mhm.
there aren't any more. But I imagine even then, when on the day of a football game, it's probably technically a football stadium and not a baseball stadium.
Yeah. It arguing semantics there, but yeah, we'll see what happens if the Rams win. Maybe we do see a couple Dodger players getting to ride through a parade,
What
but
Vince is trying to say is go Rams.
not quite there yet. You got 2 weeks to convince me. If anyone else wants to try to convince me, but I don't know if you'll get there. One of my best friends is a Rams fan, and it comes down to the fact that I don't want him to be happy. I want him to be sad, just like I was. So
You're a good friend, Vince.
all right, we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about Dodger players that could maybe play in the NFL, or at least would be funny to see play in the NFL. But first, let's talk about BetOnline. There's less football being played, but BetOnline has way more stuff to bet on this season. You can bet on points scored, totals, player performance props, to when the next coach is going to get fired, or where the next fired coach is going to land. BetOnline is the number one spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. I will say I saw that someone bet $20 on the exact score of both games on Sunday. They nailed both of them and turned $20 into $579,000, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot of stuff to bet on. There's not just who's going to win. There's a lot of different things to bet on. So head to BetOnline, check it all out. And if you go there and use the promo code Locked On, you get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So sign up at BetOnline, use the promo code Locked On, and get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline also has basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds. Best in the business, from sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is your number one online wagering destination. It's also the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. BetOnline is number one for sports wagering, not number one for copywriting for ads, but we'll get that fixed and we'll put it into our own words. But final point here. Actually, first, let me just say thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. And if you're not already doing that, make sure to make Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. We're free, and we're wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All right, finishing up. We might have talked about this before, but there's a new roster. There's roster turnover, and we're talking about Dodger players that we think could succeed in the NFL, or would be funny to play in the NFL, or would just seem athletic enough to play football. I guess we'll both name a couple players. There's no real draft here, but I'll let you pick the first one, Jeff.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's funny that Clayton Kershaw was a center. Like, and I know high school football is different than the NFL, but a 220-pound center just kind of cracks me up. Kershaw's a big, strong boy, but not offensive line. My first pick, the one I always go to is Max Muncy. Texas boy, thick, fast, strong. I could picture Muncy being either. I thought maybe like a fullback. Maybe doesn't quite have the speed to be a running back, but a fullback or a middle linebacker. Just kind of just go, and his shortness, his lack of height might actually be an advantage as a middle linebacker. Kind of hide behind the guys and just destroy some people. I always thought it was so funny that after the go get it out of the ocean, like Aubrey Huff came to Madison Bumgarner's defense, and I just think Aubrey and Madison, the Gossip Girls, I think it's a great team. But he said, you don't want any Madison. He's country strong. I'm like, look at Max Muncy. Like, you want to tell me that Madison Bumgarner is more country strong than Max Muncy? So yeah, I'd love to see Muncy playing in the NFL.
Yeah, and actually Muncy's the almost ideal height for a linebacker or fullback. They're usually short, stocky guys. You have to have a little speed. Muncy has enough speed. He'd have to work on it, but he could work out for sure. I'm going to go with the obvious one. And based on his size, he'd obviously only have a couple positions to play. That's Mookie Betts. Based on his size, he'd be a pretty good slot receiver, I'd imagine. If you've seen Hunter Renfrow from the Raiders, he's a guy that does not look like he plays in the NFL, and he's had over 1,000 receiving yards this year. Even Odell Beckham Jr. is not the biggest guy. He's obviously a freak athlete, but Mookie's somewhat on that level in terms of freak athlete. Odell might be a little bit more athletic, but not by much. So Mookie could succeed in that role. I guess he could probably play cornerback too, but he would definitely probably work better in open space with the ball in his hands. Mookie's a star. We've seen him ball 300. We've seen him. There's videos of him playing catch or running routes as well out there. He's obviously good at baseball. He's probably pretty decent at golf. And, I don't think there's anything out there that Mookie can't do at a reasonably well. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but reasonably well. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I think Mookie's height would probably push him to defense. I think he'd end up being more of a defensive back just because he doesn't have the size to be a receiver probably. Because, I don't know how tall football Hunter Renfrow is, but I assume he's taller than – because Mookie, is what, 5'8"?
He's listed at 5'10", and Mookie's listed at 5'9", which means Renfro's probably 5'8", 5'9", and Mookie's probably like 5'7", 5'8".
Yeah. And maybe he could pull it off. My next one, somebody who does have the size to be a receiver, is Cody Bellinger. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got everything. Cody Bellinger is the Cooper Kupp of the Dodgers, as all of us Rams fans know. So you can relate, Vince, big Rams fans here. I don't know how tall Cooper Kupp is. I just know he's the Rams' good receiver right now. But yeah, Bellinger with his height, he's 6'5" and crazy fast. I think Bellinger's got everything it takes to be an awesome wide receiver.
Yeah, he definitely has height. If he bulked up, he'd be up there, and he's definitely athletic. Definitely could fit that mold for sure. There's not honestly, when you think of the Dodgers, you don't really think athleticism. They're not necessarily the most athletic guys. I'm gonna go with just pure size on this one, and it's not a guy that we don't love at the time at the moment. He could make us love him in the future. Luke Raley's listed at 6'4", 237. He's pretty fast, as we saw. I think his sprint speed's up there in the upper half of at least the Dodgers team. He looks a little goofy out there in the outfield when he's running, but in football is a little bit different type of running. So I think he could figure it out. I'm sure he played football maybe growing up with that size. So he's definitely a guy that could find a role, whatever it is. He doesn't necessarily strike me as any particular role, especially since football guys are super athletic, like 6'4", you could say, like on the D line, or O line. He'd have to bulk up for O line and he'd have to get faster for D line, but he's a guy that could fit in somewhere. He's a big guy that can with some speed.
I was thinking defensive end for Raley. I think he's fast enough to do that and got the size and strength. I'll do one more, and this one's a little outside the box. I think Chris Taylor could be a really good quarterback. And, he's got he's not as small as he seems. We always think of Chris Taylor as being small because he's fast, but he's he's 6'1", I think. He's a good sized dude. He's well built. He's got a really good arm. We don't see it a ton, but he's got a good arm, and he's got the wheels. I feel like give 6 months of intensive training to Chris Taylor, and he could be a solid quarterback.
Yeah, I could see that. Honestly, when I was looking right now earlier for the 40-man roster to kind of see heights and weights, and I've stood next to Chris Taylor. I guess I've never really paid attention. He's listed at 6'1", which means he's at the very least 6 foot.
And that's how because I've stood next to him too, and I've been surprised. Oh, I think of this guy's a little guy, but I'm not much taller than him. I'm just a couple inches taller than him. So
yeah. The next, I'm just gonna name a couple guys since I don't necessarily think that they would be getting the NFL, but I'd like to see them on the football field. Austin Barnes, he always gets mentioned as like the most tenacious Dodger. I think Ross Stripling would ask that question on his old podcast of something to that nature, and everyone always pick Austin Barnes. I don't know if it's somebody didn't want to fight or something like that. Austin Barnes, he's an intense guy. Vesia in the same boat, an intense guy. He's also a guy that's a little bit bigger, and I've seen his videos of him lifting. He can put up some weight, so he'd be able to bulk up probably a little bit more to where he needed to. I've never seen him really run, but I'm sure he has some decent speed on him. And the last one was Trey Turner is also bigger than you think, which means I think he could play safety or corner in the NFL if he did put on like 20 pounds of muscle. He'd be right in that ideal range for a safety or a faster safety or a corner. So yeah, I didn't realize how tall Trey Turner was, but he's one of the taller ones on the Dodgers.
Yeah, Blake Trinan and Bruce Gratterall are both obviously massive human beings too. So you probably find a spot for them, and just keep AJ Pollock away from the football field. He would be dead week 1 of the preseason.
Yeah, I'm sure Blake Trinan wants to play with Aaron Rodgers, same team.
We don't talk politics here, Vince.
Hey, that's that. They both have the same stance, so that's it. All right, that's all. I'm sure there's more Dodgers, but those are guys we would want to see. I know we're going to play football, so at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But, Jeff, it was a football/Dodger filled episode that we made it through. Is there anything else you want to add before we head out?
No, that was a fun one. Always fun to talk Dodgers with you, even when we're mostly talking football.
Yeah, there you go. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to make Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to tell your friends and family about us. Baseball season, hopefully we're approaching here in the next month or so if things go the right way. It's time to start getting excited about it again. But there you go. Lost my train of thought, but we're going to keep rolling here. If you want to follow us on social media, we are on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vince Samperio. If you want to call and leave us a voicemail or send us a text, you can do so at 323-863-5625. You can also send us an email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. To your smart device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.